Here today with Rita Clifton. How are you? You well?
I'm not bad at all, thank you very much. Considering what's happening in the world and things like that, actually, I feel alive and kicking. And, we all need to do a hell of a lot, don't we? Over the next year or 2 years, etc., we need to do a hell of a lot for ourselves, for the world at large, and do whatever we can do.
So I was going to swing straight in with the question, but I think firstly my question has to be, tell me about your delightful tasting curtains behind you.
These are not my taste. I should just emphasize that. I happen to be in a hotel having this conversation. If I were at home, I'd have a few more books and things like that, careful composition.
Yeah.
But anyway, this will do. We sort of try to frame it in a way that that doesn't look as though you got the unmade bed over there. So there we are.
Gotcha.
We can do this anywhere, I hope.
Absolutely right. Listen, let me ask, kind of the world of leadership and taking companies forward. How's leadership changed from your perspective? What have we learned over the last couple of years, and what are we going to be seeing going forward?
Well, I think one of the most dramatic changes that we've seen over the last few years is that actually leaders have both had to and also wanted to behave more like the human beings they really are. If there is one upside from what's happened over the last couple of years, is that we've seen into people's houses, we've seen unruly pets and children running in and out of conversations. We've seen people for who they are and where they are when they're in their normal mode. So I think that actually seeing leaders in their human habitats has been very healthy. And what's more, frankly, I think leaders have had to really, I guess, connect with all their stakeholders, their employees, their staff, their broader community stakeholders and everything else, and actually say, we don't know the answers, we are doing our best. And what's more, building those relationships in a way that actually is empathetic, is going to have a long-term impact. And I think actually there will be some good things coming out of this really, really terrible couple of years we've all had.
So let me ask, and we're in the middle of flip-flopping between working from home and kind of going back to the office, and who knows how that's going to end up. But I suppose from a leader perspective, in terms of what you've just said, are you concerned that people will slip back into old habits? And how does that leader take what they've learned over the last couple of years in terms of being more true to themselves and put that in the office environment without being concerned they're going to undermine themselves, I suppose, for want of a better phrase?
So it is true, people could slip back into old habits. I mean, the corporate press release almost, business leaders and business as a brand, if you like, hasn't done itself a lot of favors, almost by behaving like the alien nation. Do you know what I mean? Wearing, costumes that set us apart, spouting jargon, paying ourselves in a way that many normal people think is out of this world. So I think it'd be difficult to go back because we've got a lot of structures now, and also we've exposed a lot of ourselves again as human beings, because actually that's been the way the world has gone. And again, we now have structures, so ESG type of measurements, for example, where actually you have to show exactly what you're doing and show how you're taking responsibility. So I think that there has been some really good long-term effects, and frankly the door only swings one way. Once you've opened the door to talking to people as human beings, seeing them in their normal lives and actually acting like the flawed human being that you are, that's just trying to do the right thing. It's quite difficult to put that particular genie back in the bottle. And, we've had COP26, we've had, the evidence of some of the really terrible things that could happen to the world, not only environmentally, but also, frankly, from a social point of view, that I think will be an enormous ongoing pressure, not always in a bad way, to help people do more, be better, connect with their other fellow human beings, and to run the business again in a way that is really going to help their employees' health and well-being, help them do more than they possibly thought that they could, and build really secure long-term businesses that are based on long-term relationships with all your stakeholders.
And do you think that's going to be a new wave of leaders, or is it going to be the ability for existing leaders to actually change and adapt and grow? And can they do that, I suppose?
I think it's both. I think there are some leaders, and it's been interesting to see so many business leaders talk about things like imposter syndrome. Can they do it? And particularly when they come into managing the pandemic. I mean, the challenges, the logistical challenges, let alone the human challenges and the health challenges and mental issues. I mean, people have had to make some real changes. So I think that's a really interesting element that we're all dealing with at the moment. So you talk to people, people like Jane Angardia or Antonio from Lloyd's Bank, etc., talking about mental health challenges, etc. It's out there. Those
Mm,
broader conversations are out there. And now we just need to make sure that actually the way that we all do business reflects that new level of humanity, because it's now underpinned by metrics and structures, and also some demands from both your employees, particularly younger employees, as we know,
mm.
and the world at large.
And how much do you think at a board, kind of, you mentioned mental health there, and I was actually thinking if you asked prior to the question talking about sustainability, because you mentioned that previously, how much of the board discussing that from a metrics point of view, or is it still kind of a feel good element to the whole thing?
Hmm. Well, it's interesting because obviously there are some huge short-term issues. I mean, just in terms of staying alive as a business, having enough money,
Yep.
to pay for people's salaries and so on, and how are you going to get laptops to people working from home, and how are you going to get your goods delivered to people's houses, or your hospitality. I mean, all of these have been really intensical short-term challenges operationally, and also from a financial point of view as well. But what I'd also say, I mean, if you go back to, for example, Davos 2 years ago, you could hardly move for people talking about purpose. And people
Yes.
talking about purpose as though somehow it's a new idea. Of course, it's not. You can demonstrate over 70 years that purpose-led businesses, those who have a strong ideology, tend to outperform all others. And so
Mm,
therefore, what you would say about that is that, that conversation is very live. It was very live at Davos. It's very live right now. And what we're seeing is those things being passed into metrics, performance issues, and the kind of conversations that actually we weren't able to have, say, 3 years ago. So I think now these things are embedded.
And so do you think do you look at these times and whatever happens kind of going forward, do you look at them positive, or do you in a positive manner, or do you look at it as a way in terms of it kind of as a blip we need to get over?
Well, I think the awful thing, if I can put it this way, is that human beings have a horrible habit of only responding to catastrophe.
Right.
You know? So people can see the evidence of climate change, for example. They can see it happening, in
Mm,
terms of extreme weather events, and also, TV series. Sir David Attenborough, on whom I've had a crush since I was about 7, by the way. He's doing a documentary where you've got, a baby whale with a plastic bag, and suddenly people change their points of view. Now, I've been talking about these things, so many of us have been talking about these issues for many years, but you
yes.
just need some vivid events that bring it home to people, human beings at large, but of course business leaders as well. And to your question about whether or not it's a new thing for many business leaders, I think a lot of business leaders are now finally relieved that they're able to come out as the human beings they are, they really
Right.
are. Having had to look as though they're chewing concrete blocks for breakfast and things like that, they're finally able to come out and say, actually, I've struggled just like many other people have, and also our companies have, but we are moving forward. We're doing these things, and so on. So I think that catastrophe sometimes breeds creativity and urgency. I mean, honestly, I've almost got whiplash for the speed of changes that we've seen over the last couple of years in terms of concern for the climate, from the environment, for social changes, in
Mm,
great part driven by pressure from employees. But what we can see in the world outside is a result of social inequality, etc. Any business leader is going to look at that and going, we need to take this seriously, and we need to do something. And frankly, for an awful lot of business leaders, they're going, thank goodness I can come out and talk about this stuff like a normal human being. And
yeah.
what's more, my investors are going to be interested in it. I mean, BlackRock talking about taking money out of unsustainable assets and putting them into more sustainable assets. I mean, that's red in tooth and claw, but it's happening. It's happening from the investment community, from your employees, from communities outside, and frankly, I think for people themselves, business leaders themselves, they want to change. Many of them, they want to talk about this stuff in a way
Mm.
that's normal and authentic, and fantastic. They're now able to do that in the workplace, which is blurred into their personal life, this is good.
Yeah. So let me ask one final kind of, we come to the end of 2021, moving into 2022. For Rita Clifton, what are you looking forward to for 22? What excites you out there?
What excites me out there? Well, I guess that, we are seeing some really, radical changes in the world in a way that I think we'd all like to see. We talk about COP26. I mean, even though it might not have done everything that people wanted to do, thank goodness what we're seeing is, a real step change, an agreement that things have to happen. I mean, that's at least a step forward. So from a personal point of view, this kind of change, and frankly, the world needs changing, business runs the world, so we need to change business. And so therefore, that excites me. How do we all make sure we're changing business in a way that is good, productive, make sure that we are solving some of these many challenges, and also, frankly, that's personally very satisfying. And, I wear several hats in my working life these days. I sit on commercial boards. I obviously do, speaking and writing. I've done a book on imposter syndrome, which is interesting when it comes to leadership. And also I'm on the board of many different environmental and sustainability organizations. And that combination that used to feel quite separate, the great thing now is those things are coming together. The things you are concerned about as a business leader are the concerns that are shared by many people on this planet. And actually, purpose-led organizations, and frankly, from an individual point of view, being a purpose-driven organization, these things are coming together. And I think helping to solve many of the problems, but also taking up a lot of the business opportunities that there really are out there. So it's a difficult time, but roll on 2022, from my perspective, there's an awful lot that we can all do, and actually a lot of things that we can feel good about.
Rita Clifton, thank you for your time. Been lovely speaking to you, and been lovely seeing your hotel room, I should say.
I'll try another one next time.
Perfect.
Okay.
Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.